He's created us for a purpose with particular gifts to use, and it's okay to enjoy using those gifts. And if you don't have the gift of preaching, that doesn't mean you're a second-class Christian or whatever,
Hello all, and welcome to Season 1, Episode 2 of Audio Stew, a show where I talk about the things that matter in life with people I care about. I'm your host, Kurt Bailey, and today's guest is JJ Springer. JJ is the youth pastor of Heartland Evangelical Free Church in Central City, Nebraska. He was my youth pastor growing up, so I wanted to bring him on the show and just talk about his life and his experiences in ministry. The discussion wound up going in quite a few different directions, actually, so be prepared for some bunny trails and stuff, but it really was a great conversation, so I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Audio Stew. We're excited today. We got episode number 2 for season 1, and my guest today is JJ Springer. Say hello, JJ.
Hello, Kurt, and Kurt's audience.
Yeah, how's it going, JJ? Doing good.
I'm doing all right. I was just telling you, I'm on the backside of a positive COVID test, and fortunately my symptoms were super minor coming out of it. It's a little bit foggy, a little bit of fatigue, but overall, of all the experiences with COVID, I'll take mine over most of what I've heard. So doing all right, but just trying to get back into somewhat of a routine here.
Yep. JJ's he's a trooper. He's coming through for us, and he's also one of the ardent supporters of the show, I would say.
I am.
He's been around since episode 1 of Star Wars.
I learned a lot. I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, so it's good to actually learn stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. It's always cool to hear stories of people listening to things and be like, oh, that was cool. And JJ's really good about texting me and be like, oh yeah, hey, I listened to this. And so it's he's one of the people that, you realize the joy of making the show. So thank you, JJ.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. It's fun to hear your interviews and fun to hear your personality come out, Kurt. And so just keep up the good work.
Thank you. So I brought JJ on today to talk about pastoring the youth. He is youth pastor. Is that still your title technically, or not anymore?
I've got yes and no. I've got a bunch of titles. I still oversee the Heartland Youth Ministry, Heartland Evangelical Free Church in Central City. Mm-hmm. Oversee the middle school and high school ministry. But we have a really great team of teachers and volunteers, and I really just think of myself more as part of a team than anything else, and wear some other hats with the church, get to do some other kinds of ministry and administrative types of things, stuff that doesn't look like you would imagine ministry would look, but just has to, kind of stuff that has to happen for a church to operate.
Yeah.
So, and all of our pastors and everybody on staff wears a bunch of hats. You've got your title, and then what you do day to day just depends on what needs to get done. And so we all kind of see it that way.
I was going to say, because didn't you had to take over some responsibilities when Pastor Johnson retired, right?
Yeah. Yep. A little oversee the finances. And so he handed that off to me. And then Scott did a million things and still does a lot of those things just without the official title of pastor. But a lot of that's been handed on and divided out among the other pastors. He worked with some of our older population, and we've all kind of picked up the slack there a little bit. Not replaced Scott, because he's got a unique set of gifts, as you know, and everybody, if you're listening from Heartland, you know that already. So you can't just replace somebody, but you try to pick up where they left off.
Yeah, that's really cool. So yeah, JJ was my youth pastor in high school. It's really very influential in my growth in a lot of ways. So it's cool to have him on the show, and still have a connection and stuff. Before we get into talking about you pastoring and stuff, let's dive into a little bit about just, who is JJ? Like,
who am I?
Who
Let's
are you?
see.
Family, hobbies, any of that kind of jazz?
Yeah, I'll try to give you a quick thumbnail sketch and just
Okay.
jump in and either tell me what I need to skip over or what you want to hear more about. But
Okay.
I grew up in Aurora, Nebraska, so just down the road here. My parents still live there. Grew up on a farm there, and I loved living on a farm, but am not cut out to be a farmer. And
I think that's a lot of people.
yeah. So thankfully, I figured it out before I tried farming. But went to the University of Nebraska. Decided to pursue a teaching degree, and so got a degree in elementary education and taught for a few years at a school in Lincoln. And during that time, I enjoyed that. Enjoyed working with kids. Didn't enjoy grading papers very much. Got involved in some other kinds of ministry. One of those was with a group that it was the Nebraska affiliate of Focus on the Family called Family First.
Okay.
And did some volunteering with them, and that turned into a position where I got to work a little bit with public policy and a little bit with youth leadership, and enjoyed that a great deal. Got to work with some great people and do some neat stuff. And actually, during my time there, got to connect with some families from here in Central City that had no idea I'd eventually be moving here, but built some relationships with a few of those families. Sheila Garrett was part of our program, and Stephanie now Fronsel was part of the program, and a few other people like that. And did that for a while. Enjoyed it enough that wanted to get a little bit educated in that realm, and so I started a degree program in Christian apologetics from Biola University, and really enjoyed that world a great deal. And so did that kind of work for several years, and as part of our youth program, we would invite some pastors in, and one of the pastors that we had come in was an old friend of mine who was pastoring in Central City, Zeke Pfeiffer, and he came and spoke at our events once or twice, and we kind of stayed in touch. And in 2007, or can't forget my family, met my future wife in the early 2000s, and we built a friendship, and that friendship turned into marriage in 2005. So in a few days is my 16th anniversary, which is insane because it feels like we've been married for 3 or 4 years. Life comes at you fast. Let's see. So I was talking kind of in a career way, and then I switched off to family, and it all runs parallel.
That's how a lot of life
goes
together.
So anyhow, Carol and I wanted to be involved in some kind of ministry together, and so we started volunteering with the Crisis Pregnancy Center in Lincoln, and just really believed strongly in what they were doing, ministering to young girls, or not even young necessarily, but women who are in crisis and find themselves expecting a baby, and trying to support them and love them well and encourage them and help them and their babies. And so we got involved in that, and that became there's more opportunities to do that kind of ministry for women than there are for men. So Carol got really involved, and I wasn't quite as involved, but just watching that world play out, we started to see a need for foster care, adoption, things like that, giving women in crisis good options. And so we decided we wanted to get involved in that world, and so we started foster care training, and we took in some kids on emergency basis, or there's another word that's suddenly not coming to me, but I'll think of it later. But anyhow, some short-term type situations. And then it'd be summer of 2007. So I was still working at Family First, and I was actually out of town at a conference, and it was at a conference center in Connecticut with little cell connection, and I had to walk to the top of this hill to get in touch with my wife. And one day I'm up on this hill, and I've been trying to call her and couldn't make a connection. My memory of it is hearing the words, "Hey, I can't talk right now. We're taking in 4 kids." And like, okay. So I spent the rest of that weekend thinking, I left Nebraska with 0 kids in my house. Going back, there's going to be 4 kids in my house, and just kind of, I was a zombie for the rest of that conference.
Oh, no.
And so I flew home and got in really late, and it's all a blur, but I remember these 4 little kids like suddenly walking around my house, and
So that really was.
And that's pretty much how it went down. And it was really the grace of God, because we hadn't planned to take in that many kids, and had we been together, we probably would have said no. But I'm really thankful that it went the way it did. Those 4 became springers eventually, and so that's been quite a journey in and of itself. But initially, just the shock of going from 0 to 4 kids was at times fun, but incredibly exhausting, and your whole world gets turned upside down completely. And in the middle of all that, so that was August of 2007, and a few months later, I'd gotten an email from Zeke, and he's like, "Hey, I want to ask you about something. You got time for a phone call?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so he calls me one night in like January, I think, early January, and he's like, "Hey, our church, we need a youth pastor." And part of my job there was to talk to pastors. So I'm like, "Oh, Zeke wants to know if I know anybody in the market."
Yeah, of course.
So my mind starts going, do I know anybody that I would recommend? And then I hear Zeke say, we'd like you to consider it. And I kind of did a double take. And we were at a spot, Carol and I were at a spot, we had just moved and closed. We had just sold our old house and closed. And I remember thinking to myself, I got my ducks in a row here, and things are finally going to start to feel a little bit normal here in Lincoln. And I see my wife gesturing, and I'm thinking she's not gonna be in favor of moving to Central City or any of that. And I'm like, it's okay, honey. We'll pretend to think about it, and then we'll say no.
Yep.
We'll be respectable about it. We'll tell them we don't want to move. And turns out her gesturing was not tell him no, but don't say no till we've had a chance to talk about it. And I thought, she was going to be my out. She was going to be my easy out to say no to this thing. And she was actually very supportive of the idea, which was great. And so we kind of went through the process of connecting with the church in Central City, and all at the same time considering a move and trying to figure out what's going to happen with these kids. And we didn't really want to buy a house in Central City until we knew, are we a couple with 0 kids or a couple with 4 kids?
When did you adopt?
So we adopted, the adoption date was June 12, 2009.
Okay, so still a couple of years out.
It was, almost 2 full years. And we closed on the house a couple of months before that, but then actually moved in that same week. So I actually spent a year working at the church, but driving back and forth from Lincoln. And I still don't know how we made it through that year, except God was very good to us. The church was very kind to us, but it was chaos, for a year. And Carol was home with the kids. When the kids moved in, our son at the time was 4, and then the 3 girls were basically 3rd birthday, and then 18 months and 6 months. And so just quite a handful.
Yeah.
So moved in 2009 fully at the same time, moved, adopted the kids. And so things stabilized a little bit at that point, but still pretty crazy, kind of the way it all played out. But like I said, God took really good care of us. The church showed our family a lot of grace, provided a lot for us as far as the move and just support and encouragement. And so yeah, that's my on the fly.
Yeah.
How did I get from Aurora to Lincoln to Central City? So how'd I do?
That was pretty good. I'd give you, so I'll give you a solid 9 out of 10.
All right.
I don't know what a 10 out of 10 would be, but I'm assuming I would feel it when it happens.
There's always room for improvement. Yeah.
Yep. Nothing,
okay.
not to your discredit. I mean, that's still an A.
All right. I'll take a 9 out of 10 any day. Yeah. Those are pretty rare for me.
So obviously you've had a very adventurous life.
Yeah, which is interesting because I am not.
No.
I've told people I try to be the most boring person I can, and God keeps pushing me out of the nest, as he says. So yeah, I haven't sought any of this out.
It just keeps happening.
Yep.
You're like, well, I guess this is happening now.
Yep.
At some point in time, because you have had an adventurous life, at some point in time, maybe we can talk more about it, but. We'll get through today first.
All right, sounds good.
Did you grow up in a Christian household?
I did, yeah. Believing parents. I grew up at a church where the gospel was preached, and so had a clear understanding of, this need to accept Christ, the reality of heaven and hell, our choices matter, all of that, and thankfully. Nobody's childhood is perfect, but I'm really, by the grace of God, I had parents who there was no disconnect between what I heard at church and how they lived in the home. And growing up, I didn't realize how rare that was.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't have that basis. And so just kind of took it for granted for a long time.
I've been, that's something, it took me a while, but I've started to realize that myself in my own household. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, you watch other people who appear to be having the same life experiences, and then you realize, they don't have the same life experiences. So parents who, they would tell you they're not perfect. I know they're not perfect, but understand the gospel and what it means to live by grace and keep the main thing as far as who Christ is, and keeping yourself in church and just being transparent about who you are and your need for grace and all that. So yeah, was really blessed to be raised that way.
Okay.
Yep.
The reason I asked that is because I know you went into elementary education as your degree, but I didn't know if anywhere, where along the way did the thought of becoming a pastor, was it literally when Zeke
it was literally, yeah, once in a while people will say, when did God call you into the ministry? And I'm like, it took the form of a phone call, because we have this view of pastors as, and with good reason, these guys who are set apart and have just a clear understanding of, but that's not necessarily the case, And so I had seen the value of discipleship, and I've benefited from some really great pastors over the years, but just never saw myself in that role. I already told you I don't seek out adventure. I've never really been looking for the next thing, but typically God has been the one to somehow or another say, here's the next thing. And he used this opening here in Central City and used Zeke. And, I had known Zeke and Jamie a little bit way back in college. We hadn't stayed close or anything, but they wanted somebody leading the youth ministry who was a little bit older, who wasn't, just a couple years older than the kids or
Yeah.
anything, who had a little life experience and value on apologetics and worldview thinking and teaching, and so some of my background really fit with what they were looking for the church's youth ministry. And so, and then the weird thing is I wouldn't have said I knew many people from Central City, and then you come here and you realize how closely intertwined communities are, more so than you kind of realized growing up, having lived
Especially
in Lincoln
small
for quite a while.
communities.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we ended up realizing we just knew a lot of people already. And so it was just a fit to move back here. But no, I never had a dream or a movement of the Spirit that said you need to be a pastor, But I kind of grew up with the impression that God sort of shows up and speaks in certain ways, and I still believe that He can, but quite often I had a friend sit me down one time and kind of walk me through what I've come to believe is a little bit more biblical model of decision making, and he talks about categories of what has God clearly said in Scripture, and what is your natural gifting, and what do those who know you well, people close to you who love God and care about you, what kind of input are they giving? And so he had talked to me. He kind of walked me through some of those biblical concepts, and so I didn't feel a lot of pressure to feel the voice of God.
Yeah.
You still try to be tender to what the Holy Spirit might be doing, but really prioritize, Scripture and gifting and wise counsel from godly people. And so in that process, I had some godly friends, and I went to them and I said, hey, what do you think about us making this move? And I didn't talk to 20 of them, but 3 or 4 different people who know me well and my strengths and weaknesses, and they all said this could be a really good thing. So
I don't remember this for sure. Were you the one who gave me that Just Do Something book for
probably
graduation?
I've passed out a
I'm
few
pretty
of
sure
those, so good chance.
Yeah.
The
Like,
Kevin
I think
DeYoung
that's-
book is a real short version. There's a bigger, I loaned it to somebody and it's gone now, but a guy named Gary Friesen, a book called Decision Making in the Will of God. It's an extended kind of biblical look at what he calls the wisdom model, which, if you think your model's right, you're not going to call it the wrong model. He calls it the wisdom model. But you read it and you realize, there's a whole lot of life that God doesn't speak to directly. And there's these extremes. Should I rob a bank? Well, you don't need to pray about that. You don't need to wait for God's already told you not to steal things. So on the one extreme end, there's that.
Yeah.
And the other extreme end, like, which pair of socks should I wear? Should I pray about that? Well, because it doesn't matter that much. But then there's categories like a move or getting married or taking a job somewhere that are very significant, but Scripture doesn't speak to directly. There's no, since the book of Revelation, there's nothing in Scripture that says, Kurt, you should marry person X on such and such a date. And so we've kind of developed a folk understanding of these things that, well, God will just tell you, and He can, but He doesn't always do that. But there's still a biblical way to approach those things, and so I can't remember what your original question was, but
I asked you if you wanted me to just do something.
Oh, okay, yeah.
See?
So Kevin DeYoung's Just Do is like it's like the Cliff's Notes of that original book, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a good,
pretty similar way of looking at the world. So
yeah, so for all you people out there, not sure what you're gonna do tomorrow, maybe just go out and live for the Lord and see what happens in a lot of ways.
Absolutely, trust Him, and don't be afraid to make a big decision. Don't be afraid to take a risk. But like we've been talking about, listen to godly counselors who know you. They might know your motives better than you do. They might say, hey, are you doing this for the right reason, whether it's a mission trip or a college decision or a relationship decision or whatever. Get close to people who love the Lord and love you, and let them speak into your life, because we all, the Bible has a lot to say about, older men teaching younger men, older women teaching younger women, and because they've lived some life and they've made some mistakes, and they have a lot of wisdom to offer. And so I try to seek out mentors who have lived a little more life than I do, and try to be encouragement to young men who are, coming up after me in the Lord. And so the Scripture has a lot to say about that if we're willing to listen.
Yeah. And be willing to listen, be humble enough to recognize that you don't got it all figured out.
Right.
Quite frankly, none of us do.
Yeah. No, you never do. I'm a little further down the road than you are, Kurt, and I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a side tangent, but that's kind of what a lot of JJ and I've done over the years. I feel like is just talk through the Bible and life and how to live. So
yeah,
there you go. That's a small taste of what my
little picture of some of our unrecorded conversations are like, huh? Yeah.
Let's go back to that first year. You said it was a little bit rougher.
Okay.
You got commuting and everything.
Okay. Yeah.
So were you like that first year of being hired here at E3? Was that like you are the youth pastor? You are in charge of ministry?
Yeah.
Okay. So how'd that go?
Man, it was a lot of it was great. I mean, you're coming into a new community, a new church, and you're just trying to figure out what's what. And having not gone to seminary, I was some pros and cons of that. Sometimes I think some who have gone to seminary really have really particular expectations of what ministry is going to look like. And I knew I didn't have that. I knew I was just like coming in cold and
it's gonna be
kind of making it up as I go. And again, I said this before, but this church has taught me a lot about grace, just from Zeke to the staff to the families here have been incredibly good to me and my family. And so you step in, and because my background's in apologetics, I kind of had it in my head that, well, this is what needs to be the focus, and so pretty much everything I would talk about would have some kind of apologetics slant or application or whatever. And then you realize, okay, there's more to ministry. That's a hugely important thing. I don't want to leave that in the past or minimize that. But there's just a relational aspect to ministry. There's learning to just really care for the people who you're ministering to, who you're talking to, and I've realized then I had a lot to learn about all that. I still do. But just making the mental shift to, are you shepherding these people? Do you love these people? Are you getting to know them? Or are you just trying to prove yourself? And, I think that's a process we all go through. But I was in that a little bit. You come in and you feel like I've got to impress these people, and then you realize that's never going to be enough. You're never going to be happy in ministry that way. It's just always going to be a battle. And so anyhow, so that first year was, again, you're trying to get to the next thing, and but God is really kind and really good. There was a really neat team of volunteers in place, just some great families in our church. I can't remember your family in particular. I think you guys were living in Arkansas right at that. You had lived in Central City.
Yeah.
And so I was hearing about, hey, there's this family, the Baileys, moving in. And I'm like, change? I've had enough change, and everybody likes them, but I don't know.
I don't know who
and then
these
you
people
get to know the Bailey family, and you're like, oh, that's why everybody's like, this is a great, really kind, grace-filled family. I count I guess I've never, I don't think I've ever met I've like passed your brother in the hall, Josh, but I haven't really gotten it. But
ever since
yeah.
Janelle, JJ's been involved with my family and youth ministry.
So yeah, your family is one of those families that's just made being in Central City, being at Heartland, doing ministry here a joy, because I know your parents love the Lord. I know that they've just been very kind to me. Your mom this week has dropped off food a couple of times at our house.
Doesn't surprise me.
I can't remember when you turned the mic on, but we're dealing with the effects of the virus, and so your mom will call up and what do you need from the store, and just drop stuff off, and so yeah.
Gotta shout out my mom. I know I had my dad on last episode, but at some point I gotta get my mom on here, because she's like the kindest human being I know. So
has your dad's episode aired yet? I haven't heard it.
It has.
Really?
Yep, it went out a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
JJ, I thought you were the older man.
I thought I was too. I thought I was caught up on Audio Stew, but
no.
Okay.
Yep, that went out a little while ago. You will.
I'll find it.
You'll probably eat that up.
I'm sure I will. Yep.
My dad had to start talking at some point, and he kept going for 40 minutes straight. I was like, it was kind of late too, so I was just kind of letting him do his thing.
Just roll, Dad. What was he talking about? Anything and everything?
No, we talked about his time in the military.
Oh, okay.
So
I haven't heard much about that, so I'm going to track that down.
A new adventure for you, I'm sure.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
But yeah, no, and JJ is very flattering to my family, but I really have been blessed with a great family and blessed to know the Springers as well.
Hey, let me turn it around on you.
What
do you...
Shoot, I mean, I'm in the hot seat. They never ask me questions.
I've been waiting. I've been like, I'm gonna push him. But what do you remember, from 7th grade? What are you?
From 7th grade?
Yeah, youth ministry, and
shoot.
My ego is pretty okay at this point.
Okay,
so if you're like something stupid I said or did, just throw it out there. I'll be fine.
No, okay. So 7th grade, we would have still had the Hines. So
right.
Aaron and Michelle were leading most of the time, and JJ was the weirdo, man. Nobody wanted to go to him.
I had to get bumped up to high school.
Oh yeah.
Deal with JJ.
Yep.
Some old guy. I don't even know.
How old? I'm gonna sidetrack you. How old were you your first year?
Let's see. So we moved August of 2008. My birthday's in August of 1972. So I was 36 when we came.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you'd be mid 40s ish or
now?
mid 40s. Well, no, when
you were in. So what year would that have been?
That's what I'm trying to figure out. 2013.
2013. That's when you were in 7th grade.
I think so.
Okay.
I have no idea. That was a while ago.
So about that, yeah. So I would have been 41 then.
Yep.
Yeah. I wasn't anticipating this much math, so we're hitting all the categories.
I cannot do arithmetic anymore. I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer your question though, so I really in junior high it was kind of more of a have fun and type stuff. Mm-hmm. And going into freshman year, I think I think it took me a little while to kind of warm up to like the new environment and stuff. I don't remember this all for sure because it's a little blurry, but I think sophomore year was definitely the year that I was like, okay, like JJ is a legit guy. Like we need to like.
It took a year to prove myself, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
but,
that's funny.
Yeah, no, it really did start to have like a big impact, and we wanted to be more involved. And you were very good about letting us kids who wanted to be more involved do that. And then I think like the next year was good too. My senior year was a little bit weird just for a lot of reasons. I think I didn't really come as much to youth group. And that was a weird...
That's really normal for seniors.
Yeah.
Though. I mean, like, I don't know exactly your story with that, but life just gets crazy busy for you guys. And you guys are getting pulled a million directions. And so not uncommon for seniors to get pulled, you know, it's one of the things you don't have to do, and when you're a senior there's so many things you do have to do, school and extracurricular and getting ready for the next step, and so that's not uncommon.
Okay, good.
You know, so it
would be like the first student JJ ever lost his senior.
No.
No, I think it was a lot of some of it was after being there for 3 years. I'm like, JJ's largely going through a lot of the same stuff, which is good because a lot of these kids are hearing it for the first time and things like that. But I was at a point where I didn't really feel like investing in that area and like the younger kids and stuff. So, and I didn't really need it for like a social thing because I was doing good at school. And so I went up to the men's Bible study, I think a lot of senior year, but it's still good. And honestly, I think it's taken a while, but like I think I've learned that the things I learned in youth group are still like largely embedded into like who I am today, which is, you know, most of all credit to God in that, but credit to you, credit to the other youth leaders and stuff, and really just realizing how much knowledge I received, and not like just knowledge, but like you guys did a good job of prioritizing what would be important.
That's gratifying to hear.
Yeah.
If I had to, I don't know if you would put it in these terms, and I don't know how good I am at it or we are at it, but my mindset is, you know, I mean, we want to meet you guys where you're at, but we want to see you walk with Jesus over the long haul.
Yeah.
And some of that means handing you a tool that it's like, hey, you're going to put this in your backpack. You're going to need it in 10 years. You might not know why right now, but trust me, in 10 years, you're going to want this, you know? And that's kind of how I try to think about things, is what is just going to, you know, tickle ears, but what is going to be helpful over the long haul. And then hopefully along with that is building the kind of relationship that, you know, in 5 years or whatever, if you run into something in a relationship or in college or whatever, that you feel comfortable calling me up out of the blue. Maybe you haven't talked to me in 3 years, but you're like, hey, I just heard a professor say this, or my girlfriend just said this, and I don't know what to do with it, you know. And that's really gratifying, you know. I'll hear from somebody I haven't talked to in a long time, and out of the blue, they're like, hey, I'm going through a little crisis here, and I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted. These were the seeds I was wanting to plant a long time ago, was just the kind of relationship where you know, people know you're available for them over the long haul.
Was that something that you knew, like, when you first started that you would prioritize? Or that's like, what was one thing that you like just, it took you a while to realize the value of like a lesson that you're just like, oh, this is why I'm doing this kind of?
Ask me that question again. I'm trying to think.
I kind of changed it halfway as I was going. But like, so realizing those, no, it's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
Somebody walked into the church,
Okay.
so you might hear
How
a little
dare
bit of
they?
background.
Yeah.
But I can tell it sounded kind of like Christy Loy. It sounded like her laugh, maybe.
Okay.
But if
I
she
think
cops
it's-
onto the show, it'll be an
Okay.
adventure. So
I
let's.
think it might be Don who does a lot of cleaning here. But
Oh, okay.
We'll see. Yeah. Might have a surprise guest coming in.
Yep. That's a new feature on the show. But yeah, shoot, now I lost my place in my head. That train has set sail. Now I'm mixing my metaphors too.
That's all right. That's all right.
No, but like that planting of that seed, that was something that obviously takes a while to come to fruition. Is like years later, this person calls me back.
Yeah.
So whether it be that thing, like initially starting off, was that something that you even had an inclination of?
No, not really.
Okay.
It just sort of emerges over time. You know, I talked about growing up in the home that I did, and you just take for granted that everybody's got kind of smooth sailing in their home. And it's taken me a while to realize that is the exception and not the rule. So at this point, when I'm talking to a group of kids, my assumption is not, hey, life's going good for these guys and they're just a bunch of sponges ready to hear what I have to say. Instead, it's the assumption that, okay, if I'm talking to 20 kids, most of them do not have what I had and are going through something. It could be a family thing. It could be some unconfessed sin. It could be any who knows what, but just the assumption that, okay, they're dealing with something that they may not be comfortable talking about, or maybe they don't have the words to talk about, and so anything I present, I try to put it in terms of okay, I get it that life is really hard, and so I end up talking about the same things that are going to be applicable to that more than anything else, just coming back to the sovereignty of God and the reality of the resurrection and God's promise to forgive, just these one-size-fits-all truths that really do sustain us. When you're in crisis, you need to hear about the sovereignty of God. When there's scary stuff happening in the world, you need to hear about the resurrection. Going through COVID or whatever else our country's going through, to walk by sight and to watch the news, it feels like things are falling apart, and humanly speaking they might be, but the resurrection really happened in history. The Apostle Paul makes it clear that really means something for how we view the world, and it transforms how we view things, and then just the reality of God's forgiveness. And 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Every student is dealing with some unconfessed sin, not because they're students, because we all are, and it's unconfessed because we're afraid of what will happen if we confess it, and so to constantly be reminded of the kindness of God. Paul in Romans talks about God's kindness is meant to lead us to repentance, and we have this view that if I repent of something, it's going to lead to humiliation and loss, and if the world finds out what I'm really like, it's going to be bad, and so we don't confess our sins. But when it's framed in terms of God's kindness and the fact that no, when we confess our sins, the outcome is actually really good and hopeful and joy. So all that to say, I have a pretty small set of themes that I try to keep coming back to, because in a room of 15, 20 kids, I think I kind of said this, but they're not going to pop up and say, hey, I'm struggling with sin X, or this is going on in my home, or I had this awful experience, because they often think they're the only ones. You walk in a room and everybody looks like they've got their act together, so whatever you're dealing with on the inside, you feel like you're the only one. The enemy has sort of set up the game to make us feel that way, and that tends to isolate us from people and from God. And so if I can bring those basic messages back over and over and over, you talked about hearing the same things, If you hear that 50 times when you're a kid, you might actually be ready to apply it when you're 25. And so so that's kind of become my way of approaching ministry, just because you don't always know exactly what the situations are you're dealing with. And so you try to provide something that is absolutely true and biblical and hopeful, regardless of what the specifics of somebody's situation are.
I know. Yeah, like my life growing up was obviously very blessed in a lot of ways, but I also know that what you're describing was not was also in my own life, because just because I have a great family doesn't mean like this is the result of the fallen world that we're in, is everyone is sinful, and but having those lessons from youth group to, again, I get exactly what you're saying. It was like, we would talk about it a lot, but that's because it's what people need to hear. Right. It's what gives them hope in life. And I'm gonna keep moving a little bit, because I know you're getting closer to your mark here.
Okay.
I had some other thought that kind of got derailed earlier, and I'm just gonna move past it. So, is there anything else you've prioritized in teaching? So you've prioritized, especially for young people, I suppose, but like the not even elementary truths, I guess, but like the most foundational parts of Christianity, and this is how like you can make it through life, essentially. You spent a long time in apologetics with us. I don't know how you're doing things these days, but in my time that was a big emphasis. And then you also made a point about connecting with people and stuff too. Is there anything else that you think, like, I mean, that's a lot to deal with right there. Like, you're gonna be a pretty good set if you do that. But like,
there probably is, but I can't offhand. Couldn't tell you what it is. But I'm not totally sure what you're asking.
Like,
I think,
what else would you prioritize, like, teaching young people? Like, what do they need to know, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of talked about what they need to know. I'm trying to grow in how that gets presented. I'm a data guy. I'm a book guy. Yep. And so, like, I have this idea that whatever I need to know, I can get from a book, But that's, not everybody's wired that way, and it's a good thing. We're not all wired that way.
Yeah.
And so to realize that, everybody's got a different learning style. Everybody's got a different gift set that they're trying to figure out. What do I do with myself or my life, to really build up the different natural gifts that the kids have. Some are good at understanding things intellectually. Some are good at building things and making things. Some are really good with people skills, just making people feel welcome, and to try to portray the Christian life in such a way that kids understand that they really do have something to offer, regardless of kind of where you think you're at with things or what the world says you have to offer. We're all created with specific gifts to be used for God's glory, and to just help kids to see that, and the world doesn't really set it up that way. The world says, if you have this skill set, you're valuable. If you have this other skill set, it's really not a skill set, so you're not that valuable. And to say, no, that's ranking yourself on the world system. Come back to the gospel. Come back to what God says, that He's created us for a purpose with particular gifts to use, and it's okay to enjoy using those gifts. And if you don't have the gift of preaching, that doesn't mean you're a second-class Christian or whatever. Use the things you enjoy for His glory, and that's okay. That can be enough. So
there's a lot more of, what we discussed earlier is a lot of the what, but learning the how has been kind of the taking time over the years.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. And I would, you've done this is my opinion. Okay. So take it for what it's worth, but I think you've done a great job in a lot of ways. With apologetics, going on those mission trips, which a lot of times, people talk about short-term mission trips, aren't necessarily for the people there, but for the people going.
Yeah.
But those were helpful for my growth.
Good.
Even talking about just different issues, being willing to discuss, like, you're very passionate about the topic of abortion, and so is this whole church. And that's even played into discussions I've had in college and stuff. And giving us, I already said it earlier, but giving us the opportunity, like, for me, I'm a people person. I like to share what I know, which, grows over time.
Yep.
But being willing to be like, let's let John and Kurt take care of youth group today. Like, flying by the seat of their pants, but like, it's like JJ sitting in the back giving us a smile and the thumbs up. And it's like, okay. But just giving different kids different opportunities to serve and realize how, like, they might actually serve the church in a lot of ways. It was just really helpful.
Cool. That's gratifying to hear. God is good.
Yeah. I'm trying to make JJ feel good after calling him old earlier. So.
I will not let you live that down, man.
Yeah.
You said you've had conversations specifically about abortion on campus.
Actually,
I'm kind of curious to hear more about.
Very recently, I had a conversation. Basically, it was more of a finding out another person's beliefs and seeing if we.
How'd that come? I don't want to turn the tables too much, but how'd that come about? Like, did you walk across campus like Steven Crowder, like abortion is murder, changed my mind?
No.
Okay.
This was. Cats are out of the bag a little bit. This was a conversation I had with my girlfriend about it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Because it was something that I valued and I wanted to discuss, and so it was really interesting to hear her background and my background on stuff. Although we did talk more, and we've talked about how she has like other friends who even like grow up in the Christian household, but like don't adhere to the same beliefs that we had growing up. So it's that one hasn't come up as much over the past couple years. It's definitely come up some, but that was just a recent memory, and so that's why I brought that up. But yeah, very, very good discussion though. It was good. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes or so left.
Okay.
I'm gonna take us down the you mean you've already talked a lot about hard parts of life. There's a couple specific memories on the top of my head that I'm curious about, and then we can finish it off with a fun or favorite memory too. So
Cool. Okay.
Whatever that winds up being, I guess.
All right.
It better be of me, but you didn't hear that, audience. Correct me if I am wrong, but you probably multiple over the years have led the youth in this church through some hard things. But off the top of my head, it would be the death of Chris Toucan.
Okay.
Is that at all in your realm?
No,
or not really. Was that before?
That happened.
I think you might have had the after.
Yeah, that happened before I got here. So
so maybe I'm wrong and you don't have much to speak on that at all.
Okay. Honestly, no.
Okay.
The Toucans became really good friends. But that happened a couple years before I got here.
Okay.
And so I can't claim any role.
Okay. That was not
that. Yeah.
I asked because I knew it was sort of in that era.
Yep.
And maybe I know it's come up over the years in conversation, as I think like that would have been my sister's grade, I believe, Janelle, and sort of right in that era and different things like that.
I think.
But this is a little bit of sidetrack. It doesn't involve you, but so there's a story there that maybe will get told sometime on this show. I don't know.
Okay.
But one I do know for sure that you were a part of was the fire in our church. And I know there's a lot of details that don't need to be shared with that. But what was that like, leading this group of people that are confused and like, why is like our church building got burned, and like
I haven't thought about that much lately, but off the top of my head, there's some aspects of that probably shouldn't
don't get into that
complicated thing, but what I mean, I don't know that I have a lot to say on that as a youth pastor, but just watching the church respond to that with a lot of grace and a lot of resilience, and all of that is the grace of God, just kind of how he had prepared our body for hardship, and how he had appointed leadership who was ready to not be fazed by it, just to come back again. One of these one size fits all truths is God's sovereignty, and he's bigger than this. Thankfully nobody was hurt in that fire. That's a blessing. He provided a place for us to meet. Just to see his goodness in that was really, really neat. And just to have an opportunity to be a part of this body in that time was really a blessing to me, just to watch, like I said, watch people handle it with grace, watch people make decisions in a really humble, mature way, was really a blessing, and talking through, I remember a few conversations with people who are struggling with different aspects of it. Could we have prevented it? All of that, and just say, no. I mean, a lot of what led to that was really well-intentioned stuff, and a couple people who thought, could we have prevented this? It's like, doesn't, you can eat yourself up asking that question, but God's at work here, and we know he is because he says he is, and we're seeing it. And so yeah. And again, that feels, I think that was February of 2015. So that's like six years ago now. And so what's that?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. It's not that long. It's just that as a church, we've been through so much since then.
That's true.
It's not the years, it's the miles. I mean, we've gone through another move and some other stuff, and
I mean, now you got COVID too. So
yeah,
that was probably a little different. That probably would have been a better question to ask how that's been going.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, again, man, I would love to sit here and talk about what an awesome pastor I've been during COVID, but all I can really say is just watching our people navigate uncertainty with a lot of hope and a lot of maturity, and just what a blessing it is to be a part of this church during something like that, and even, I'm a Twitter junkie, and I watch the news, and so you see the world sort of falling apart, and man, last March there were just some anxious days, not so much. I never was that afraid of COVID, but it's like FDR said, the only thing we have to fear is fear. It's just the general sense of doom, and what does this mean for the economy, and just everything about life gets unpredictable. And I'm a sports fan, and they took away sports for quite a while, and that hacked me up, just all of that. And then you see the goodness of God in it, that okay, our people didn't lose their minds. We've got some great leadership here with great perspective, and they're just like, yeah, this is another thing. God's faithful, and we get to be a part of it. That's all a little generic, but you're making decisions week to week, and you in that you kind of learn, okay, this is a new thing for everybody. And so, on any decision you make on the front end, you're like, we're gonna look back at this and probably kick ourselves for some of this, but it's okay. Grace means you don't just have anguish over every little decision, because you don't know what you don't know. And so I'm thankful that our leadership has really kept good perspective through all this, and we've tried hard to just be an encouragement to people who are really vulnerable. We have people in our church. We have had loss through this. You mentioned Larry Schreiber on one of your podcasts, and so Larry's family is grieving, and as a church we grieve, and it's a real thing. It's just an opportunity to be the body, and live through something that's really uncomfortable, and still glorify God, and the world doesn't have the resources to do that, but the gospel gives us those resources, and so we can do that. We can go through COVID and race riots and economic uncertainty and political uncertainty, and keep our wits because of the sovereignty of God in all this, and not be not shrug it off. These things matter, stuff that God has a lot to say about all this stuff, so it really does matter. But the gospel lets us maintain a perspective through it that the world needs to see.
I feel like I feel like I kind of hit a different chord with my question than I meant to.
Okay, that's all right.
But like,
redirect things
No.
back whichever way you want to.
no, not. I think in my head I was. The reason I asked the question about like leading people, like young people through tragedy or whatever, is because I personally remember the fire a little bit, and this is maybe the blindness of it's not nostalgia. That's not a good word for it, but like me looking back on the past and stuff. And I remember you. You were kind of like the guy that like a lot of us, I feel like JJ, like this is his ministry. It's not yours as you've explained, but like for a lot of us is like, okay, well, what are we going to do? Like we moved out to Timberlake for a while and did stuff out there. And like, I remember there was just things were different and then there's uncertainty, and like you especially and a lot of the other leaders too were just, in my mind anyway, like people who stayed the course, or like, okay, we're gonna shift here, but we're still like we've got a handle on this, and it's not like this chaos of whatever. And
Yeah, well, that's really cool to hear, because like I haven't even thought much about that for a long time.
yeah,
But you kind of go through it, and a little bit like COVID, you're making decisions moment by moment. You really don't know what you're doing, and so that's really gratifying to hear that, because I haven't talked with anybody about it for a long time.
I think,
but it really is the grace of God, because in hindsight, nobody quite knew what we were.
Yeah.
We just knew, okay, we got to do something. And again, we're so resourced. We have access. Like, I didn't start Timberlake. I haven't done anything to keep Timberlake going.
Yeah.
It's just there, and there's some great people there who are like, use our space, and you're like, awesome, thanks a ton, because we need some space.
I think maybe that's just, this is why, what you do, what a lot of teachers do and stuff is leave an impact on people when they're young, because I think the lens of me being like in my youth and stuff was like, okay, like it's like there was some sort of reassurance in it because you guys navigated it or whatever, like you had a plan of like, okay, this is what we're gonna do. But now as I've gotten older and talking with you more and stuff, I'm like, a lot of these people are just figuring it out as they go too. Like it's not like this, like, I mean, as if you're older, you've gone through more things and you've kind of learned how to respond, but every situation is still different. But I think,
and you're gonna keep having those aha moments, like if by the grace of God you have a family, eventually you're gonna be like, your perspective on your parents is gonna change an awful lot. You'd be like, oh, maybe they were making it up as they went along, just like I am right now.
I thought about that with my sister and brother-in-law, with Janelle and Elliot and their kids. I was like, I really respect them, but then I'm like, I got to thinking about like, but they're probably just figuring it out as they go. Like they have no idea what they're doing.
Yep.
But you've done a good job of, in humility, recognizing that nothing happens apart from the sovereignty of God, that His grace is throughout it all, and really the church is a community, and so it's not, it's not you in charge of everything, which I'm thank goodness of
absolutely no,
because
amen, brother.
not to you, but we both know that community is how we are meant to function as people in the church. So anyway, that was my own tangent.
Cool. That's all right.
You got a favorite memory
anything. Could be funny, serious. You've been here a while. Surely you got something blowing in there.
I should have had something. I asked you beforehand if I should, and you didn't tell me to.
So. Oh, my bad. Doesn't have to be a favorite. Just like, that was nice that one time.
That was nice.
I've got one I could share.
Okay,
if you need me to stop.
I want to hear it in a minute.
Okay.
So this, all that pops into my head is my first year. We hadn't moved yet, but everything is new, and you're just like, I have no idea who these people are, anything. And I was under the impression that I was supposed to take everybody on a ski trip. And so we planned this ski trip, and I do not I'm not coordinated at all. I didn't grow up going skiing.
We are in Nebraska, so.
Anyhow, yeah. Where was I?
Sorry, I derailed you.
Yeah. No, I've been skiing 3 times and all 3 were it's just like falling down. Like when I go to Colorado, I want to look at the mountains and I want to eat good food and like hike, but I don't want to just fall down and so anyhow. Oh, so we get everybody together on a bus and we go out there, and somebody tipped me off that something was in the works, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for whatever. And I go, and in my backpack, it was the first morning, because we went out there on like a Friday, and I go to find my warm, normal clothes, and all that's in my backpack or in my duffel bag is a pink bathrobe and pink hot pants and pink girls just want to have fun t-shirt. And it's like breakfast was at a certain time. We were meeting up, and I'm like, okay, I guess this is my initiation. No. So I put on all the pink gear, and it didn't quite fit right, and just like, okay, this is part of the package. And somebody told me later they were impressed that I didn't lose it, and I'm like, I didn't know that was an option. If I had known I was allowed to lose it, I probably would have lost it. But I just thought, this is what I got to do. So there's a photo somewhere around here. Maybe it's hidden in a tub somewhere. But anyhow, that comes to mind. So, and I think, like, I haven't been victimized by too many. I think if I had like flipped out, like I would have more stories to tell. But my response to conflict is just to like hunker down. Everybody's like, well, that was disappointing. So I haven't been victimized by too many other jokes because they didn't get much of a reaction out of that one. So that's a story. I'm sure, like tonight, I'll be laying there and I'll think of like six stories.
Yeah.
I might call you. It's like 2 a.m. I'll be like, Kurt, can we do a little addendum to the podcast?
Yeah, I'll hold my phone up to the microphone.
Okay. Yeah.
And JJ will tell me some other story.
So
I had not heard that one.
Okay.
Oh, this is a really simple one. This is why I appreciate JJ's sense of humor. I remember driving into Utah. What was that? That was the first mission trip that we went on. So that was 2016.
Okay, for me, the first one that you would have gone on. Okay, yep.
And JJ, we were getting to it was Ogden, Utah, and he looks over at the sign and he yells at everyone, and he's like, "Hey, look, guys, it's Hate You, Ned, go!" Which is just Ogden, Utah backwards.
Okay, yeah.
And for whatever reason, that has stuck in my memory and forever holds a place in my heart. Just how emphatic JJ was about this, and he was laughing to himself.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of myself that night. I remember CJ Rubelid laughing at, like, I got him, because CJ's hilarious, and So I was pretty proud.
Yep.
If you can make a funny person laugh, you feel pretty good about life. So,
Yep.
but I was mixed feelings about those stories because I'm like, okay, when we get into eternity, is that dumb joke gonna matter? but it could be worse. It could be worse.
Yep.
But yeah, I think
that was my special moment.
yeah, to spiritualize it, I would like to think if we can help people relax and laugh, we're a little more teachable when we're relaxed, and so and that's we haven't talked much about those trips, but those trips are I love doing them. I love planning road trips. I love the kind of ministry we get to do. I love on a Wednesday night, I'm usually a little uptight because I'm like, okay, we gotta get through X, Y, and Z, and I don't know who's gonna be there. Whereas on these trips, it's generally we've kind of built a team, and so I can let my guard down a little bit and crack a dumb joke or whatever, and show a different side of myself than I feel like I usually can on a typical Wednesday or Sunday. So yeah, those trips have just a lot of neat memories from those trips, and seen God do some cool stuff on them, and we get to go help out. There's some great ministries out in Utah and Colorado that I hope we get to go encourage them when we go. So
yep.
So I'm glad those came up at least a little bit in our conversation.
That probably would have been a better topic discussion than a couple other points we brought up. But sometimes
that's all right.
Sometimes this is how a conversation goes, and we got a hard out today. So otherwise, we'd probably spend the next half hour, 40 minutes talking about
some other time.
Some other time, maybe.
Yeah, I haven't used up all my stories here, so we can connect again.
Yeah.
I want to wait though till when you're like at Joe Rogan level success, and then I can be like, Kurt, I knew you in the beginning, and so you gotta bring me back on. So.
Okay, I'll write it down.
Okay.
JJ once on when Joe Rogan's success.
There you go.
Do you listen to him much at all?
Just a few times. I actually tried to add him the other day because I'm all caught up on the podcasts I listen to, and I'm like, I need something new, and I know he's huge, but you can't now, right? I mean,
he's on Spotify now,
and I'm too cheap to get Spotify.
Yeah.
So I've watched a few of his interviews, and it's just fun to try to figure out why is he a big deal?
Yeah.
But he's so curious that you can see why he can have just about anybody on and it works, because he's just got such a curious mind and
I don't know
kind of a knack.
He's like a couple thousand episodes, I think. I could be
that's
wrong,
insane.
But
yeah, I mean,
I'm over here at like what 27 maybe, or something like that.
But if I said, Kurt, I'll pay you $10 million to produce 3 hours of content a day, you'd find a way, right? You'd rearrange your schedule and you could catch up. So he's got some advantages you don't have right now. So don't.
Yeah. He's got a little fancier mic than I do. Me, I can still fit my get up in my backpack, and that's called good.
And he can't do that, so that's your.
Well, yeah, but he's got a studio that people come to instead.
Still, focus on. Don't play the comparison game.
No, I like what I do.
This is gospel application. Don't
this
compare.
This is my travel anywhere, record anywhere.
Yeah.
So
you can walk through some place and not get mobbed like he probably does.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage to that.
The many wonders of not being ultra famous.
There you go. Yep.
Well, that's all I've got for you today. Anything else you want to add right at the end here?
No, this was fun. I have been thinking, like, this is the pinnacle of my success, is being on an actual. I told the kids, I'm like, hey, I'm going on an international podcast today.
True.
And they're like, really? And I'm like, well, yeah, no matter where there's the internet, you can get this thing.
This is true.
And so I asked them for advice, and they didn't have much. But I've been thinking about how's my family gonna receive this? And so I've talked about my fam. I do want to give a shout out, just in case there's one part of our story we didn't get to, but we took in a foster daughter a couple years after the adoption, and awesome little girl who she's now back with her family, and that's great. But she's still part of the fam, and at some point she might listen to this. So I just want to say, hey Bella, to her, hey Dakota, hey Amy, Faith, Liz, Bella. Thanks for listening. I hope I have not embarrassed any of you or you, Carol. So,
that was very sweet. I appreciate that.
That's my little postscript to the fam. So,
okay. Yep. All right. Well, thank you, JJ.
Yeah, thank you
for coming on. And like I said, there's a lot more we probably could have talked about, but we're gonna call that good for today. So
awesome. Okay. Thanks, Kurt.
Catch you later.
All right.
Well, that's going to do it for today's conversation. I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to give this podcast a rating or a review. That helps me out, and just letting people know that the show actually exists and stuff, or even just sharing it with your friends, whatever you can do to help out. I would really appreciate it. A couple really quick things here at the end. I'm not going to apologize for the audio because everyone always tells me not to do that and that the content's good enough on its own, so I'm not going to apologize. But also, I don't know what the heck happened with my voice. For some reason, my position was such that my voice is way quieter than it normally is, so I couldn't figure that out, but hopefully that wasn't too much of an issue for you guys. Another thing I noticed, apparently I said I've done 27 episodes. This is right at the end. We were talking about Joe Rogan, and that is not even close. I think I've done I should have gone back and actually counted. I think this is 20 some that I've done now, but not 27. I think 27 is maybe the number of guests I've had on the show or close to that. So I don't know where that number came from, but there it is. And the last thing I was going to mention is this was just a really different kind of conversation in a lot of ways. A lot of these episodes I've done recently have felt almost more like interviews. It's always kind of a fine line between an interview and a conversation, I guess. And today's episode felt more like a conversation, which threw me off a little bit because JJ's such a great guy, he asked me questions back and stuff, and I'm like, oh no, what do I do? So that was kind of fun. And I've been moving more and more away from an outline. I have a topic I want to discuss with someone, but I don't want to basically outline the whole conversation. But I always have a few questions that I've thought of beforehand that might be good to ask in the conversation. And a lot of those, for whatever reason, didn't quite hit home right this time. So I don't know. It's just something for me to think about more, I guess, in the future and when I keep doing these episodes and stuff. But I remember thinking that afterwards, right after the conversation, that was kind of different. But then listening back, I was like, oh, no, this was good. I don't know what I was thinking about earlier. But yeah, I really enjoy talking with JJ. He's one of my favorite people to just have a good conversation with. So I would love to have him back on. There's in some reality, there's a dream of JJ and I being the Like Trees Walking podcast. If you've never listened to that you should go check that out. But that's a pastor and one of his parishioners talking. So in some alternate reality, I think that'd be kind of fun. Or, just have him on as a regular, or, I don't know. At some point, JJ, you'll come back. I don't know if you'll be on as much as Christina has, but at some point, expect to hear from JJ. Okay, I'm just rambling at this point. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have an awesome day, and tune in next time for, I haven't recorded it yet, but the next episode that is scheduled is going to be with one of my college friends. She's going to talk about her time in Peru, which I think should be a really interesting conversation. So hopefully that'll happen. Be excited, and catch you guys some other time.